Yo, hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another MLB DFS Slurve video here on YouTube. This is No Huddle Fantasy Sports. We're talking baseball-specific DFS for tonight, for the main slate tonight. We've taken a couple days off, took the weekend off, so I apologize to you guys, but we're back at it tonight. Over the weekend, I was doing season-long NFL drafts, a bunch of season-long stuff, just honestly. I'm sure you guys are doing the same considering we are all DFS fantasy baseball, fantasy football fanatics. So NFL stuff content will be coming out very, very shortly as we quickly approach, which is absolutely crazy, the start week 1 of the NFL season. But as I mentioned, we're back at it tonight. It's Monday, August 31st, 2020, talking baseball specific DFS for the main slate tonight. And speaking of the main slate, it's not the greatest in terms of amount of games, but we have 7 total games available on the main slate tonight starting at 7:05. Seems about normal in terms of a Monday slate in my opinion, but the one thing we do have to know here, of course, we have a Colorado game, so San Diego playing in Colorado, always something you have to consider, whether you're going to play players from that game, stack them, or fade them. So a decision has to be made tonight, especially on a smaller slate. Outside of that, in terms of weather, there's not a whole lot to talk about. As I always mention, I record these videos very early in the morning, so I don't obviously have the most up-to-date weather stats right before lock. But looking at it, Washington, Philadelphia showing just a little bit of rain in that Philadelphia area, so make sure you consider that. Beyond that, Cleveland at Kansas City, that Kansas City game has a very, very small amount of rain. And then also in the Colorado game, again, 5% I'm showing right now, but it really doesn't matter at this point. The things will change as we get closer to lock, so make sure you check all that out. And I'll certainly update my stuff as we get closer. If you check me out at No Huddle FS over on Twitter, I post last minute thoughts before lock, so all of that will be considered. Beyond that, if we're talking about Vegas totals, it's an interesting slate. We have some elite pitchers on the board, which is really, really fun, especially on these smaller slates. Colorado, San Diego, both those teams projected 6.28 and 6.22 apiece, so the highest, obviously, on the slate. There are 2 other teams above 5, something to be noted and interesting. That's Atlanta and Philadelphia, 5.46 for Atlanta, 5.37 for Philadelphia. And then on the flip side, games that are under 4 or teams that are under 4, Minnesota 3.95, Tampa Bay 3.43, and Kansas City at 2.97. So all those teams, the low ones, are facing what I would call elite pitchers. We have a number of them available for tonight. But in terms of an outlook, it's an interesting 7-game slate. We have a lot to deal with for such a smaller slate, which makes it a little more exciting. Not one of my favorite slates in the world, but we're going to attack it here. We're going to talk main slate DFS. We're going to jump into the FanDuel app here, as always. So if you're playing on DraftKings, I apologize. We won't be talking DraftKings specific pricing, but a lot of the analysis does apply, so make sure you check this video out. Hopefully it's helpful for you guys too. As always, we like to start at the pitcher position. It's the most expensive position, of course, especially on FanDuel. It's the most important position considering you're only starting one guy. So where are we going? You have a lot of options tonight. You have a lot of elite pitchers. Shane Bieber's on the mound tonight. Garrett Cole, Lucas Giolito just threw he threw a complete game. He threw a no-hitter, not a perfect game, a no-hitter versus Pittsburgh over the weekend. And you have other guys with a tremendous amount of upside, such as Glass now, but in general, where are we going tonight? I do like Garrett Cole as my number 1 pitcher. The reason I'm off of Bieber is a couple of two things here. He's $12,000, which makes it quite nearly impossible to afford any expensive bat tonight. He's almost $2,000, $1,300 more than Garrett Cole, and he's pitching on the road. Garrett Cole, on the flip side, saves you that amount of money. He's pitching at home. And basically, he's been dominant. He is Garrett Cole, right? He has a ridiculous 36-37% strikeout rate. This dates back to last year when he was in Houston, continuing to dominate this year. More importantly, I like Tampa Bay generally as a team. I think they have a lot of underrated bats, but he has absolutely dominated Tampa Bay. You can see here, has already pitched twice against them this season. I will admit, not the best performances for a $10,000 pitcher in terms of total points. So you got a 48 point and a 35. In the 35, he didn't get the win. He didn't get the quality start. But in both games, he had 10 strikeouts. A minimum of 10 strikeouts is basically the floor on him versus Tampa Bay, and it has been for years. He's given up a couple runs so far this season. But when I say minimum of 10, I'm not lying. We can date back to last year. I'll do that while we're going through this. So he faced them 4 times in 2019. Twice in Tampa Bay or twice at home in Houston. He struck them out 10 times, 15 times in those 2 games. Another game in Houston, had a 14 strikeout game versus them, and had his probably worst performance against them in Tampa Bay. 49 total points, had 10 strikeouts, has given up a handful of runs, has done that a few times It seems like the cap here is 4, which hurts a quality start. But several games he had a 0, he had a 1, he had a 1, he had a 1 this year, and then he has the or he had 2, and then he had the 3. So, but the key here is just a tremendous amount of upside with his strikeouts. Doesn't come out of games, not scary with a pitch count, is continuously exceeding 100. So I do like him a lot. He is also a favorite pitching at home tonight in New York, checking all the boxes as a favorite pitcher, high strikeout guy, in a good spot. All good things here. I do really like Garrett Cole as my number 1 guy, but again, he is expensive, so it's going to be really hard to fit other stacks that are more expensive, other bats that are more expensive. I'll talk about all that here very shortly. But if you're looking to save a little bit of money, my number 2 guy on the slate is Max Fried for Atlanta. He originally was not the projected starter for them, but he is tonight. Now he's a left-hander, has had a really, really good season. You can see here, I think he leads the league with a 1.35 ERA. Not certainly an elite strikeout guy, but he gets the job done. He has about a 25 or 26% strikeout rate. So certainly, not low, but it's pretty average, not high. 40 has a bunch of points here, 40, 33, 44, 39, just pitching very well this season. Limits a lot of hard contact, limits a ton of runs, is in a good spot. But more importantly, Atlanta, even though they're pitching and playing on the road, they are a large, I think 190 favorite by Vegas. So certainly a good spot for him tonight. I do really like Fried at $8,600 to save you a ton of money. The next guy I'll quickly mention here, if you really want to come down, and really it's tough because he's only $500 cheaper, but Brad Keller, if you want a home pitcher, he's pitching in Kansas City tonight, a great pitcher's park, has pitched really well this season outside of his last game. You can see here, certainly not a guy that gets a ton of strikeouts. In fact, I would consider him a lower strikeout guy, but the thing here is Cleveland just is not very good versus right-handers. You would think with all the Lindors and Ramirez's of their lineup, they would be an elite team in terms of facing basically any right-hander, but they're certainly not. They're actually bottom 10, 23rd overall in baseball with a 92 WRC+, 314 WOBA versus righties. Their ISO is only 144, which is extremely low. I think that's bottom 5 in the league versus right-handers. And then they're also striking out at a respectable top, I think 12 in the league at 24+%. So a good situation in my opinion. The downside is Kansas City is not a favorite at home. The upside is he's $8,100. I'm not going to get 10 strikeouts out of him, but you could get a quality start. You could get a win. I don't think Cleveland is threatening at all on offense, but he's also facing Shane Bieber. So it's going to be hard to come by runs for Kansas City. It's going to be hard for him to get the W. But certainly if you want to spend down a little bit, I think Brad Keller is an underrated, or I guess he'll be an under-owned asset tonight at the pitching position. The only other guy, he's not even listed here, I want to mention, is whoever's pitching for Milwaukee. So right now, we don't have actually a line on Milwaukee. The Pittsburgh playing in Milwaukee game. We know Williams is pitching for Pittsburgh. Not going to actually start him, but we may target him. On the flip side is we have no one scheduled yet for Milwaukee. I've checked time and time again. I checked as we were doing this video. So right now, my guess is Lauer's pitching. He's a lefty. I don't like him. I don't want to take any lefty versus Pittsburgh, and not that they're threatening the Pittsburgh offense, but they're like a top half of the league team, and more importantly, they don't strike out a lot versus left-handers. So Lauer or any lefty, and Lauer hasn't actually pitched well at all, but any lefty is not of interest. But any righty, if they decide to start a righty tonight for Milwaukee, keep in mind it's important for me to remind you with this. It has to be a right-handed pitcher for Milwaukee. When that happens, Pittsburgh is literally bottom last in almost every advanced stat versus right-handers as a lineup. They're starting the most ridiculous low-tier players just to see if they have value for trades. So I do really like a right-hander for Milwaukee tonight. But again, I don't like any lefty. Keep that in mind. It could come in at a super value, could come in between. We don't know who they decide to start, but that would be my last guy. We'll probably knock Keller off if they have a righty. The last thing I didn't get to mention, but I should quickly mention, Fried is in play mainly because of Boston's lineup. So they traded away Moreland. Fried is obviously a lefty here. JD Martinez is battling a little bit of an injury, I believe lower back. If JD Martinez is not in that lineup, I absolutely love Fried tonight. If JD Martinez is in that lineup, I don't like him as much. Again, I'll repeat that 20 times. It's all about JD Martinez. It's all about the lineup of Boston. Boston's lineup has struggled all season long, but will really, really struggle with it without Martinez. Their best, hottest hitter right now is Devers. He's a lefty, so left on left is eliminated here. Kind of takes away a lot of that power from Devers. Devers is obviously not as good versus lefties. Fried is much better versus lefties. Really, the only threatening bat, in my opinion, is Bogarts. So again, just check that lineup. It'll be a last-minute decision to go Fried or not Fried, mainly based on JD Martinez in the Boston lineup, so keep that in mind. So that really wraps up the pitchers. Let's jump into stacks. Where are we looking to stack tonight? Well, there's a couple of teams I really like, but I want to first start assuming we start Garrett Cole, because again, he's my favorite pitcher and we got to find a way to make it happen. If you start Garrett Cole, in my opinion, the Milwaukee stack is the best stack to go with. It works the best. It also saves you a lot of money. There's a million things I could talk about, but in general, they are a very reasonably priced stack, and that is the reason I want to go with them. Depending on where you want to start, Justin Smoke, I already knocked him on the list here. $2,900 I think is the best value. I like him as a one-off bat. I also like him obviously with their stack. He's one of the hottest hitters for them. Well, I guess not over the last week, but before that, he was coming on quite nicely. He gives you that left on right matchup. Williams is just a really, really bad pitcher in my opinion. You can go with both lefties and righties here. But in terms of their lineup, Urias should be leading off for them. Good price at $2,400, man. I mean, he's right on right, but it doesn't matter. I told you, Williams has just struggled to both sides of the plate. Obviously, if you want to spend up, Christian Yelich is just overpriced though for what he's been doing, which is basically nothing. I don't really want to spend $4,100, but it works. It fits nicely in the stack. Hitting third lately has been Heria, if I'm pronouncing it right, Hira. But you know, $2,400 as I mentioned for Urias, $3,200 for Heria. Yelich at 41, Justin Smoke at 29. Really, really opens things up. You can see even with Garrett Cole, we still have $2,900. If you pull Yelich, it becomes even way more reasonable. You have over $3,000 available. Ben Gamel should be in the lineup tonight. This is their last game. He's also gets that left on right matchup, $2,200. Hopefully he's hitting higher in the order. Really, really good value there. Now we're at $3,400 for players like that. So a bunch of different ways you can go, but I think Milwaukee fits very, very nicely with a Garrett Cole type of lineup. It also, as I mentioned, saves you a ton of money and isn't a great spot in general. No, they haven't been the greatest, especially versus right-handers, but I do like the value and the savings you have with them. Another stack I want to mention here is Atlanta. I think Atlanta, especially Freeman, he's one of my favorite bats on the night. But the Atlanta stack is in a great spot tonight. They're projected 5.46 on the night, so a very, very high, respectable number outside of Coors. Probably my favorite lineup outside of Coors, and you can go a bunch of different ways here in my opinion. Obviously, I mentioned Freeman. He's hitting third. He's the key to that lineup. He should be above $4,000. He's only $3,900 here on DraftKings, so that's certainly helpful. But they're starting to get healthy. That's key here. Let's see if Acuna. I think they mentioned. We don't get much with that, but I think they mentioned he should be in the lineup. So double check as always that lineup. But $4,100. For some reason he's higher than Freeman. I have no idea why. But Acuna Jr. in a good spot tonight, right on right, but still like it. By the way, they're playing on the road in Boston. As I mentioned, 5.46 is a run projection total, and they're facing a pitcher named Brewer. He's a right-hander, has been pitching out of the bullpen time and time again. Got a start last week. He had an 80 pitch count, so hopefully we get a full start out of him. I'm hoping they knock him out of the game, obviously. But as I mentioned, I do like the stack here a lot. Swanson's typically been hitting second for them. You're getting a right on right there. Markakis is one of my favorite value plays on the night at only $2,600, hitting sixth, could go higher, and then possibly, just possibly, they'll bump Camargo up a little bit here at $2,200, get you another lefty early in that lineup. But a couple of different ways you can go with here. I like Atlanta, a road stack tonight, high projection total versus a pretty weak pitcher. Atlanta Braves in a good spot as a stack overall. And last but not least here, not last but not least, my last stack outside of Coors will be Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia in a good spot here. Obviously, you start with your Bryce Harpers of the world. I'll navigate over to this Philadelphia game, but they're in a great spot tonight facing, if I pronounce it correctly, Eric Fede. He's a right-hander. He's pitched well. I'm not going to lie to you, but his stats, I've been going over them all morning, are not very good. Certainly gets trashed by left-handed bats. We don't have a ton of lefties in this Philadelphia lineup, but you have a ton of good bats in my opinion, which makes it even out. So the two lefties I talked about, Bryce Harper, I like Didi Gregorius as my two big lefties. Then you can go with your normals, which is like your Rhys Hoskins. If you want real Mewtwo, he's been hitting the ball very well. But the guy that's been on absolute fire is Andrew McCutchen. Andrew McCutchen now $3,100. We were playing him when he was under 3K over and over again. You can see here just absolutely tearing the cover off the ball as of late, especially versus left-handers. But in general, really, really like Philadelphia as a stack here. And then the most expensive stack, obviously, is going to be my Colorado stack, Coors Field stack. So Blackmon, I do like Colorado better. My reasoning essentially for this is simply the fact that Marquez for Colorado, in my opinion, is a really good pitcher. Whereas on the flip side here, Richards is not a very good pitcher. So I'm attacking the worst pitcher. Yes, at any given time, Colorado can give up a ton of home runs, regardless of who's pitching. But I do like if I'm pronouncing correctly, German Marquez. I think he's a really underrated pitcher that just gets his funky stats and everything jacked up because of Colorado. But as I mentioned, I want to attack Richards here. He's really bad versus left-handed bats. So first off, Blackmon comes into play, but you have Tapioca, whatever you want to call him here, and navigate over to him. He is leading off lefty. Your Blackmon is your lefty. Should be hitting third or fourth, depending. You can save actually and get some value here, in my opinion, with Murphy at only $3,100. Playing first base. And the last guy I'll mention here at second base is McMahon. So those are your kind of 3 or 4 lefties, your Murphy, McMahon, Blackmon, and Tapia. And then, of course, if you want some heavy power righties, your Arenados and your Stories. What I will tell you is no matter who you go with tonight, you can possibly make it work with Garrett Cole, but even if you go with some of these cheaper pitchers, it becomes very, very difficult to fit all 3, Blackmon, Story, and Arenado. So you're going to have to make your decision. My opinion would be 2 out of 3 if you can make it work. You can see here it works with Arenado and Blackmon. I like that more than I like having Story in there. But every time I do that, Story hits a home run. So make your decision wisely. But that's my opinion, how I would do it. I would stick with your lefties as much as you can and then fit in your Arenados or your Stories if you so need it. Last but not least, well here, let me, I think that's good for stacks, but let's talk bats. Let's just talk generally some one-off bats. I talked earlier about Milwaukee. Now, if Milwaukee is what I just said, which is Lauer is scheduled to pitch a lefty, I like the Pittsburgh value bats, in my opinion. Will it possibly be changed? Absolutely. I don't know who's starting. If it's a righty, I like none of the bats for Pittsburgh, but we need some value tonight. It's the only way where you're going to fit Cole. It's the only way you're going to fit Colorado bats, any of the Coors Field bats in general. But some of the guys I'll mention at first base for Pittsburgh, Ozuna has not been playing well by any means, but he's $2,100, typically hits versus lefties. Beyond that, you have Tucker, if I can navigate to him, has been hitting at times higher in the order, and then you have Newman. These two kids, I mean, they're young. They're the future of the Pirates. They're not going anywhere. They're obviously trying to prove themselves. Very, very reasonable price on these 3 guys. But this only works if there's a lefty for Milwaukee. Outside of that, we lose a lot of this value here. But some other guys I will mention. I talked about Markakis. I like him a ton for a value for Atlanta. $2,600, regardless if you stack him or not. A guy that I think you can play at first base that gives you some value is Eric Thames. Has been hitting 5th or 6th in the order in a good spot versus Howard. He basically offers nothing for Philadelphia. But those are really the values you're going to have to, like I mentioned, you're going to have to search and find values. We're going to have to see how lineups come out tonight. Some other guys that are more expensive. Let's stick to more expensive bats. I do really, really like Gresham tonight leading off 4. So I don't like San Diego as a complete stack, but I like him as a lefty on righty versus Marquez tonight at $3,700. I like Jake Cronenworth also. Good price on him at only $3,300. Has been hitting a bit higher in the order, but he gives you that left on right matchup.